Kuhn Review, print speaking to the blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the National Podcast, recorded at the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @KuhnReview, that is @CuendReview. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@kuhnreview.com. That is INFORMATION @CuendReview.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
The National, Friday the 6th of February. From the Politics section. Labour MP calls for clear-out at number 10 over Epstein files, by Beth Templeton. A Labour MP has called for a clear-out of number 10 following the latest release of the Epstein files by the US Department of Justice. The call comes as he reveals there's a lot of anger among Labour MPs. Simon Ofer MP said on today's programme on Friday that there's a lot of anger among Labour MPs following the latest release of documents relating to paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Ofer is also calling for the Prime Minister's Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, to leave. Ofer said there's a lot of anger among Labour MPs because really we want to have these people out. I want to be talking about the cancer care plan, not about Peter Mandelson. The call comes alongside demands for Prime Minister Keir Starmer to resign over new revelations around Peter Mandelson's ties to Epstein. In the latest pages of the Epstein files released by the US Department of Justice, it appears that Peter Mandelson, the then business secretary, shared sensitive government information with Epstein. Ofer also highlighted that Morgan McSweeney, Starmer's chief of staff, should resign. Ofer added, I know in politics we really rely on people to cover our backs, our advisors, and I think they patently haven't done this with Peter Mandelson, and I think we need a bit of clear out really at number 10. Asked whether this meant McSweeney leaving, Ofer replied, I think so, yes. If my chief of staff had done this, I think he would be looking for another job, to be honest, he said. The National, Friday the 6th of February, from the news section. Lawyers instructed to consider private criminal prosecution against Andrew. Lawyers have been instructed to advise on the possibility of a private criminal prosecution against Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, Republic have said. The Anti-Monarchy Campaign Group reported the disgraced royal to the police last week, following revelations in the Epstein files, which they say provides the basis for a criminal investigation relating to sex trafficking. It comes after a second woman came forward, alleging that she was sent to the UK by the convicted sex offender and financier Jeffrey Epstein. Andrew was allegedly involved in bringing the woman to the UK for the purposes of sexual exploitation in 2010. The woman's lawyer, Brad Edwards from the US firm Edwards Henderson, claimed the encounter allegedly occurred at the former Prince's residence, Royal Lodge, in 2010, according to the BBC. Campaign Group Republic have long called for Andrew to be investigated and prosecuted, criticising the political response to the scandal as weak, deferential and inadequate. Now they have announced that they instructed a law firm in October to seek a private prosecution. The firm is Mickelman Robinson LLP. Graham Smith, Republic's CEO, said, If not us, then who? It's a devastating indictment on the UK's criminal justice system, police and politicians, not to mention the King and heir, that we must resort to private prosecution. We hear a lot of anger about Peter Mandelson and calls for prosecution, yet with Andrew those voices are more circumspect, trying to shift the problem to the US. It should be a cause for concern that so many people believe, rightly in my view, that the royals are not treated equally in law. Equality in law is a basic tenet of democracy. I firmly believe there is strong enough evidence to justify a serious investigation. The authorities and politicians appear to want to look the other way, while minimising the accusations made against Andrew. The truth must prevail, and justice must be seen to be done. The recent revelations are the first time an Epstein survivor has alleged a sexual encounter occurred at a royal residence. The woman, who is not British, was in her 20s at the time. She was then allegedly given a tour of Buckingham Palace and tea after she spent the night with Andrew. Republic reported Andrew to the police last week, following the claims, insisting that as the allegations date from 2010, they are covered by the Sexual Offences Act 2003. The previous crimes alleged by Andrew's first accuser, Virginia Giuffre, occurred in 2001, and so were not covered by the legislation. Giuffre died by suicide at her farm in Western Australia, aged 41, in April last year. She sued Andrew for sexual assault, alleging he abused her when she was 17, after being trafficked by Epstein. Andrew has denied the allegations, but paid an out-of-court settlement in 2022 to avoid trial. The amount was never disclosed. It comes as a heckler shouted at apparent reference to Epstein at the King and Queen during a High Street walkabout. The National, Friday the 6th of February, from the politics section. Amnesty UK backs refugee-led campaign for fair housing in Scotland. By Laura Pollock. Campaigners are calling for urgent action from all levels of government to restore New Scots housing rights. The Restoring New Scots Rights, Fair Housing for All campaign, led by people with refugee status or who are going through the asylum process, aims to highlight the domino effect of human rights breaches experienced by the many refugees in Scotland who are unable to access adequate housing. At a launch event in Glasgow today, campaigners will share experience of people becoming trapped in hotel accommodation for up to a year after receiving leave to remain in the UK, and the unfair barriers faced while trying to learn English and enter the workforce. The campaign is calling on the Home Office to stop making people homeless at the end of the asylum process, on local authorities to be transparent about decision-making, and for the Scottish Government to properly fund areas with high levels of homelessness. Florence Dioka, Director of Central and West Integration Network, or CWIN, which supported the development of the campaign, said, "Hotels were never designed to be homes. As a charity working on the ground, we see how this limbo delays integration. We need a coordinated response to move newly recognised refugees into safe, appropriate housing as quickly as possible. Leaving newly recognised refugees in hotels is costly and inefficient, and it prevents them from entering the workforce and achieving independence." A representative of the campaign group said, "Glasgow is a welcoming city, but many refugees still face homelessness due to limited housing, delays in asylum decisions, and barriers to work. Homelessness affects every part of a person's life." Amnesty International UK Scotland Programme Director Neil Cowan also called on politicians in Holyrood to listen to those affected in the run-up to the May election. Through this campaign, decision-makers will hear directly from the people most impacted by the cruelty of the UK's asylum system and the domino effect of human rights violations these policies create, Cowan said. In Scotland, local authorities are breaking the law by failing to provide services to people experiencing homelessness, including refugees who have come to Scotland seeking safety. Political parties should be focused on listening to the voices of those at the sharp end of these failures in Scotland as we approach the Holyrood election in May. The National, Friday the 6th of February. SNP demand Anas Sarwar answer 6 questions over MSP's paedophile links. By Abby Garton Crosby. Anas Sarwar has failed to answer key questions on the Scottish Labour MSP's serial paedophile links, the SNP have said. Pam Duncan-Glancy quit as Scottish Labour's education spokesperson in December last year after details of her friendship with the disgraced former councillor Sean Morton were revealed. Morton, a former Moray councillor, confessed in 2017 to possessing indecent images of girls under 15 and of a couple having sex with a dog. He pled guilty and was given a community payback order, which included 140 hours of unpaid work. Morton was also given a 3-year suspension order and was placed on the sex offenders register for 3 years. Duncan Glancy later announced she would not be standing at the Holyrood election, but she has still retained the Labour whip in the Scottish Parliament. The SNP have been pressing Sarwar to answer questions on the scandal. The Scottish Labour leader held a press conference on the protection of children on Thursday, telling reporters, "I will not tolerate friendships with paedophiles. I do not want anyone to be associated with anyone like that." Previously, Sarwar told the BBC that he wasn't satisfied with the answers Duncan Glancy gave when asked about her continuing relationship with Morton, and that is why she is not standing for re-election. However, the SNP have said the Scottish Labour leader has 6 questions to answer. They are: does Pam Duncan Glancy MSP still maintain contact with twice convicted paedophile Sean Morton? When did she last contact Morton? You repeatedly tell reporters that Pam Duncan Glancy did not give me answers I was satisfied with. What were the questions and what were the answers? When did you first become aware that Pam Duncan Glancy was in contact with Sean Morton, and when did the General Secretary of the Scottish Labour Party first become aware? Have any Labour MSPs or staff members hosted Sean Morton in the Scottish Parliament since his conviction? Is it acceptable for a serving Labour Party MSP to maintain contact with a convicted paedophile? Why are you still refusing to remove the whip and suspend Pam Duncan Glancy's membership of the Labour Party? SNP MSP Rona Mackay said that Sarwar must set out the answers to the question asked by the party. Anna Sarwar has refused to sack a Scottish Labour MSP who has maintained a close relationship with a serial paedophile. That's the bottom line, she said. Anna Sarwar has dodged questions on this far too long. If he is not satisfied with the answers he got from Pam Duncan Glancy, then it begs the question, what were the questions and what were the answers? With reports that Scottish Labour Party politician hosted the twice-convicted sex offender in Holyrood, Anna Sarwar has a duty to disclose that to Parliament. This is an incredibly serious matter that can't be dismissed with his usual political soundbites. The scandal has reached deep into the Scottish Labour Party, and it's high time the public got answers on what on earth is going on. The answer to these key 6 questions is just the start. Scottish Labour have been contacted for comment. It comes as Keir Starmer's embroidered scandal in Westminster over the revelations in the Epstein file regarding Peter Mandelson. The SNP have been seeking to ban those who have relationships with convicted paedophiles, even as Mandelson, from being members of the House of Lords. Matthew Doyle, Starmer's former spin doctor, was ennobled last month, despite links to Morton being known by the Prime Minister and UK government officials. Doyle campaigned for Morton after he had been charged.
From The National, Monday, February 9th, 2026, the Culture section. Bad Bunny makes history with Super Bowl performance as Donald Trump fumes. Article by Laura Pollock. Bad Bunny was joined by pop icon Lady Gaga for a star-studded Super Bowl halftime show performed almost entirely in Spanish and carrying a message of unity. The 31-year-old singer, also known as Benito Antonio Martinez Ocasio, took the stage in Santa Clara, California, in a highly energy performance celebrating his Puerto Rican heritage and culture, and became the first Super Bowl artist to perform entirely in Spanish and to host a wedding during the performance. The main event of the American football season saw the New England Patriots and Seattle Seahawks collide in a rematch of the 2015 Super Bowl, with the Seahawks emerging 29-13 victors. Bad Bunny's Super Bowl performance drew criticism from U.S. President Donald Trump and sparked an alternative halftime show featuring Kid Rock and a roster of country musicians organized by the conservative nonprofit Turning Point USA. The highly anticipated performance opened on Puerto Rican scenes of dominoes and sugarcane fields, set to the musician's 2022 single Tite Me Pregunto, before moving into Perreao Sola, sang atop the rooftop of a casita, or little house. The performance reached a dramatic peak when Bad Bunny crashed to the casita roof to the familiar notes of Daddy Yankee's Gasolina, a tribute to past creatives who paved the way for today's Latin music scene. Later on, he was joined by Lady Gaga, who performed a salsa version of her Bruno Mars collaboration, Die With a Smile. The stage transformed into a block party set for renditions of Baile Inolvidable and Nueva York, where he took a shot with the owner of one of New York City's last remaining Puerto Rican social clubs. Fellow Puerto Rican singer Ricky Martin then graced the stage for a rendition of Lo Que Le Pasó a Hawaii, or What Happened to Hawaii, a song that has become a rallying cry for Puerto Rico's autonomy. Other celebrity guest appearances included Mandalorian star Pedro Pascal, actress Jessica Alba, rapper Cardi B, singer Karol G, and influencer Alex Earl. The Latin American musician, who exploded onto the international scene last year with his 6th studio album, Debí Tirar Más Fotos, recently made history at the Grammys as the first artist to win Album of the Year for a record sung entirely in Spanish. At one point during the show, the stage transformed into an altar as the couple tied the knot while Bad Bunny performed behind them. A representative confirmed to the Associated Press that the wedding was real and Bad Bunny served in as an official witness. The unnamed couple had reportedly invited the musician to their wedding, but he instead suggested they form part of his halftime show. Elsewhere in the show, the 31-year-old rapper scaled power lines and waved the Puerto Rican flag during his performance of Apagón, seemingly referencing the ongoing power outages and difficult recovery his homeland endured during the aftermath of Hurricane Maria. Backup of dancers surrounding him, waving flags from Latin American countries, as well as those of the United States and Canada. His performance was almost entirely in Spanish, his preferred language for recording and performing until the end, when he said, "God bless America," naming other countries before paying tribute to "my motherland, mi patria, Puerto Rico." He held a football inscribed with, "Together we are America." The performance ended with fireworks, a huge Puerto Rican flag, and a jumbotron emblazoned with the words, "The only thing more powerful than hate is love." Following the halftime show, Trump called the performance absolutely terrible. In a post on his Truth Social account, Trump said, "The Super Bowl halftime show is absolutely terrible, one of the worst ever. It makes no sense, is an affront to the greatness of America, and doesn't represent our standards of success, creativity, or excellence. Nobody understands a word this guy is saying, and the dancing is disgusting, especially for young children that are watching from throughout the USA and all over the world. This show is just a slap in the face to our country, which is setting new standards and records every single day, including the best stock market and 401ks in history. There is nothing inspirational about the mess of a halftime show and watch. It will get great reviews from the fake news media because they haven't got a clue of what is going on in the real world." Meanwhile, Gaga took to Instagram and said it was an absolute honor to join Bad Bunny on stage. The 39-year-old, whose real name is Stephanie Germanotta, shared a post to her 61.8 million followers of herself singing during the Super Bowl performance. She wrote, "It was my absolute honor to be a part of Benito's halftime show. Thank you, Benito, for inviting me, and thank you to the entire cast for welcoming me onto your stage. I wouldn't miss it for the world." Rock band Green Day performed the opening ceremony with pop star Charlie Puth, tasked with singing the U.S. national anthem. Bad Bunny was fresh off his major Grammys win, where he picked up the award for Best Global Music Performance for his hit rock EOE, and won the Best Musica Urbana Album award for the fourth year in a row. A known critic of Trump's immigration policies, the singer used his Grammy acceptance speech last week to call for immigration and customs enforcement officers to leave cities alone and opt for love. He said, "We are not savages. We are not animals. We are not aliens. We are humans. We are Americans." I would say to the people, I know it's tough to know not to hate on these days, and I was thinking sometimes the hate get more powerful with more hate. The only thing that is more powerful than hate is love. His latest 17-track fuses several genres, including reggaeton, pop, salsa, and house, along with traditional Puerto Rican music such as plena, in which can be described as a love letter to the island. Previous Super Bowl halftime show headliners include Sir Paul McCartney, Beyoncé, Rihanna, Coldplay, and most recently, Kendrick Lamar, who have performed a medley of their hit songs, often bringing out surprise guests to the stage. That article was written by Laura Pollock, read by Janet Stein. This is from The National, Sunday, February 8th, 2026, the Culture section. New play explores taboo of sex lives of disabled people. Article by Nan Spowert. The sex lives of disabled people are still a taboo subject in the theater, according to director Robert Softly Gale. It is why he intends to challenge audience perceptions in a new production about disability, sex, and intimacy. There will be nudity in the new show, but it's not a whole play of naked people, Robert told the Sunday National. However, he added, it is a play about disability and sex, so it would be a little strange for us to avoid putting that on stage. But we do it in a way that is very helpful for the purpose of telling the story. It's not gratuitous. We are not there to titillate people, but we're also not going to avoid it because that would be hypocritical. We Indulge in a Bit of Role Play is the latest groundbreaking production from Birds of Paradise, Scotland's preeminent, pioneering, disability-led theatre. Renowned intimacy coordinator Vanessa Coffey, who previously worked on Outlander, has also been involved in the production. For Robert, the production is a chance to shed some light on a subject that he believes non-disabled people tend to shy away from. I think there is a lot of fear around disability and sex, and people think it must be quite complicated, he said. That's because everything we are taught about sex tends to be about normal bodies and how normal bodies work. We are not taught about other bodies and how they work, so you can understand where fear comes from. His aim is to use comedy to demystify the subject and make it more relatable. Unless we tackle this sort of thing, we're never going to really get to a place where disabled people are seen as being equal, he said. If you can use comedy to help people relax and realize nothing bad's going to happen, that will help. Starring Ed Larkin, the first wheelchair user to lead in a West End musical, and British comedian Rosie Jones, the play takes the audience on a funny, honest journey through the realms of disability and sex, from the stand-up stage to the family kitchen table, the online world, and beyond. Robert believes the internet, with its many images of perfectly shaped bodies, young, very attractive people, is narrowing society's perception of those who can enjoy active sex lives. We have to widen that perception out a bit, he said. The play feels particularly relevant now when it seems people with disabilities are being marginalized more and more. I think we're in a very difficult climate at the moment, where it is always them and us, Robert agreed. Not just for disabled people, but asylum seekers, refugees, trans people. I have my own opinions about why politicians do that. I think it's very easy to blame everything that's wrong on someone else, so they can escape responsibility, instead of saying we're all in this together. We need to say that actually we are all in this together, and we all have to get on with each other. He pointed out that if non-disabled people only have relationships with each other, then they are cutting themselves off from a lot of experience. If we can start conversations about who can be desirable, that's a good starting point, because unless you die when you are young, you are going to get old, and you're possibly going to become disabled, he said. I think that's part of the fear people know that they don't want to deal with, so they push it away. People fear getting old, and they fear not being as capable as they are now. But unless you confront it, you are just going to spend a lot of time avoiding it. Robert believes part of the fear comes as a result of society's fixation with beautiful people. You can understand why people think that when they become old and wrinkly, they will be by themselves. But that is such a dangerous place to get to, he said. We have this loneliness epidemic in the Western world. People are very isolated and very alone. And for me, any conversations that can start to mitigate that have to be a good thing. The theater is one of the best places to explore themes based on sex and intimacy, according to Robert. What I love about the theater is that it is not like a TV program you can turn off, he said. A few people may get up and walk out, but they don't tend to do that. They tend to watch, and because of that, they can be a bit cheeky, and we can make people a little bit uncomfortable. He pointed out that it is also a collective experience. The whole audience is sitting there watching it together, so they sort of get support from each other. I think that's very important. How does he think the audience will react to the new show? Some people might find it challenging, he said. I think it will cause reaction and make people think, but it will be entertaining. There is a lot of comedy. There has to be, because intimacy and sex are quite often funny. I think people need to come ready for a bit of a challenge, but also knowing they will be entertained and have a good laugh. We are doing something we haven't done before and that I haven't seen before, so it will be something different for people to see, Robert said. We indulge in a bit of role play is at Glasgow's Tramway from February 19th to 21st. That article was written by Nan Spowart, read by Janet Stein. This is from The National, Sunday, February 8th, 2026, the Culture section. Scottish pizza restaurant named among best in the world. Article by James Walker. A Scottish pizza restaurant has been named one of the best in the world. Time Out magazine experts have compiled a list of the world's top 18 pizza spots. Severinos, which has 7 sites across Scotland, came in 7th place in a list of the world's top 18 pizza spots compiled by Time Out magazine. Time Out highlighted its chewy crusts, coal-fired bases, and sweet but tangy marinara sauce. Scotland probably isn't the first place that springs to mind when you think about pizza, but hear me out. I'd argue this New Haven-style pizza joint is up there with some of the best slices you'll ever shove down your gob, the magazine wrote. Mama's 2 in New York came in first place, and 80 Grammy Pizzeria Romana in Rome in second. That article was written by James Walker, read by Janet Stein.
From The National, Tuesday the 10th of February 2026, from the news section. Full list of Scottish restaurants with Michelin stars. Article written by Laura Pollock. Scotland is now home to 15 Michelin-starred restaurants, with 2 new ones added to the list at a ceremony in Dublin last night. A total of 1,210 restaurants, including 230 starred ones, were included in the selection, with all 3 Michelin-star establishments retaining their distinction. The 2 new 1-star restaurants, 1887 at the Torridon in Wester Ross and Killiecrankie House in Perthshire, are now placed among the most respected dining spots in the UK and Ireland. The announcement was made at the Michelin Guide ceremony, held at the Convention Centre in Dublin, where chefs and hospitality professionals from across the UK and Ireland gathered to celebrate this year's Michelin stars, Michelin Green Stars, and a range of special awards, including the Service Award, Sommelier Award, Exceptional Cocktails Award, Opening of the Year, and Young Chef Award. The husband and wife team of Tom and Matilda Zappis at Killiecrankie House were presented with their first Michelin star, with the pair stating, "Being awarded a Michelin star is completely overwhelming and something we truly didn't expect this year. Since entering the Michelin Guide in 2022, we've simply focused on doing the very best we can, taking our time and staying true to our values. This recognition means more to us than we can put into words, particularly given the challenges faced by the industry in recent years. We're incredibly proud of our team. This achievement belongs to every single person who has supported us and believed in what we're building here. Killiecrankie House is deeply rooted in its surroundings, and our sense of belonging to this place, and to see that recognised at this level is an unforgettable moment for us." Head chef Danny Young of 1887 at the Torridon said, "It's amazing. It just shows all the hard work we've been doing over the last couple of years. It represents us as a team, but it also represents the farmers, the producers, the amazing people we have in the Highlands." 3 Scottish restaurants were also awarded Green Stars for sustainability. 1887 at the Torridon, Timber Yard in Edinburgh, and the Free Company in Balerno. The Michelin Exceptional Cocktail Award was given to Alistair Shaw from Seb's in Glasgow. The full list of Michelin-starred restaurants in Scotland are noted below. 1887 at the Torridon, Wester Ross, Killiecrankie House, Pitlochry, Lila, Edinburgh, Avery, Edinburgh, Glenturret, Lalique, Crieff, Timber Yard, Edinburgh, Heron, Edinburgh, Restaurant Andrew Fairley, Auchterarder, Condita, Edinburgh, the Peat Inn, Fife, the Kitchen, Edinburgh, Kailbruich, Glasgow, Loch Bay, Isle of Skye, Restaurant Martin Wishart, Edinburgh, and Unalome by Graham Cheevers in Finiston. And that article was written by Laura Pollock. From The National, Tuesday the 10th of February 2026, from the news section. Investigation after bus burst into flames in Scottish City. Article written by Laura Pollock. Lothian Buses is investigating after one of its vehicles burst into flames in Edinburgh on Monday evening, causing traffic disruption in the city. The single-decker bus caught fire just before 10:30 p.m, with the rear part of the vehicle engulfed in flames. Pictures on social media showed fire crews tackling the blaze as flames tore through the vehicle. A spokesperson for Lothian Buses said, "We can confirm that one of our buses was involved in an incident on South Clerk Street last night. A full investigation is underway to establish the circumstances. We would like to take this opportunity to apologise to anyone inconvenienced as a direct result and extend our thanks to the Fire and Rescue Service for their swift response." The fire service said crews were called to the scene at 7:24 p.m. 2 fire engines from Tollcross and McDonald Road fire stations attended the incident. No casualties were reported in the incident, a spokeswoman said, and fire crews departed shortly before 8:30 p.m. South Clerk Street was closed while emergency services were at the scene, with diversions put in place. And that article was written by Laura Pollock. From The National, Tuesday the 10th of February 2026, from the politics section. Scottish Labour MP in tears over Anna Sarwar treachery. Article written by James Walker. Anas Sarwar was accused of treacherous behaviour by one of his own MPs at Westminster, according to reports. It comes after the Scottish Labour leader called for Prime Minister Keir Starmer to resign on Monday over the Peter Mandelson scandal. In a meeting of the Parliamentary Labour Party later on Monday, Scottish Labour MP Joanna Baxter reportedly was in tears, according to The Times and Politics Home, also accusing Sarwar of treacherous behaviour and pleading with Starmer to not give up on Scotland, according to sources. Sarwar became the most senior Labour figure to call for Starmer to go, citing concern that the distraction from Downing Street would harm his party's chances of unseating the SNP in May's Holyrood elections. He has since faced backlash from many MPs, with both the current and former Scottish Secretary, Douglas Alexander and Ian Murray, backing Starmer publicly. Starmer issued a defiant response at Monday night's meeting of the PLP, telling a packed room in Westminster, "I've won every fight I've ever been in." The Prime Minister said he was not prepared to walk away, as he received a warm reception from MPs reluctant to join Sarwar in calling for him to quit. The lack of a concerted effort by MPs to depose Starmer suggests the immediate danger may have passed. But some discontent remains, with one critic comparing the meeting to the Battle of the Little Bighorn, a Wild West massacre also known as Custer's Last Stand. The Prime Minister is expected to continue efforts to shake up his Number 10 operation, with the country's top civil servant Chris Wormald rumoured to be on his way out in the coming days. His Chief of Staff Morgan McSweeney and Communications Chief Tim Allen have already departed as Starmer seeks to revive his fortunes after a bruising start to 2026. Speaking to broadcasters on the morning media round, Energy Secretary Ed Miliband said the Prime Minister had faced a moment of peril on Monday, and Labour MPs had looked over the precipice. In a sense, yesterday was a moment of peril for the Prime Minister. I make no bones about that, he told BBC Breakfast. But, as a collective body, the Cabinet, the Labour Party looked at the alternatives of going down this road of a chaotic leadership election, trying to depose a Prime Minister, and they said no, that's not for us. He said the private Keir I know had felt slightly constrained, but that last night's PLP had seen the Prime Minister passionate and clear about his purpose. Anas Sarwar was accused of treacherous behaviour at tonight's PLP. Joanna Baxter made the comment through tears and pleaded with the Prime Minister to not give up on Scotland, sources say. Those in the room said it was an uncomfortable moment, given the intervention came in front of other Scottish MPs who privately agree with Anas Sarwar but have clearly bottled, following him over the top. And that article was written by James Walker. From The National, Tuesday the 10th of February 2026, from the news section. Support for UK monarchy falls amid latest Andrew scandal, polls find. Article written by Alistair Ferguson. Support for the monarchy in the UK has fallen below 50% amid the most recent scandal involving Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and his relationship with the paedophile financier Jeffrey Epstein. The survey carried out by Savanta on behalf of the campaign group Republic showed that just 45% of the public back keeping the royal family. When asked if they would prefer for the UK to have a monarchy or an elected head of state, almost a third, 32%, of the 2,000 participants said they would rather have an elected head of state. It comes after it emerged that police are assessing claims that Andrew shared confidential reports from his role as the UK's trade envoy with Epstein. Emails released by the US Department of Justice earlier this month appear to show the former Duke sharing reports of official visits to Hong Kong, Vietnam, and Singapore in his capacity as trade envoy in late 2010 with Epstein. Andrew also looped Epstein in on a confidential brief on investment opportunities in the reconstruction of Helmand Province, Afghanistan, on Christmas Eve 2010. Graham Smith, chief executive of anti-monarchy campaign group Republic, reported the allegations to police over the weekend. Smith added that the latest revelations of the former Duke's relationship with Epstein have unsurprisingly had a damaging effect on the monarch's popularity, given the gravity of accusations against Andrew. The monarchy is losing its one claim to legitimacy: opinion poll ratings. The trend across most polling is declining support, and this poll shows how low that support has gone, Smith said. Falling support is unsurprising, given the gravity of accusations against Andrew, and increasing concern William and Charles have shown about and covered up these issues for 2 decades. The royals are trapped. Their silence begs more questions about what they knew and when. Answering those questions will likely lead to more outrage and more questions about the monarchy's future. Andrew has previously denied any wrongdoing over his Epstein links, but has not directly responded to the latest allegations. On Monday, Thames Valley Police confirmed they were assessing the fresh allegations. It comes after the force last week said it was assessing allegations that a woman was sent to the UK by Epstein for a sexual encounter with Andrew in 2010. The messages regarding official visits are dated after Epstein's 2008 conviction for soliciting a minor for prostitution. Andrew previously told BBC's Newsnight in 2019 he had cut off contact with the convicted paedophile in December 2010 during a visit to New York. On February 9, 2011, Andrew told Epstein he had visited a private equity firm the week before and thought of you as the financier who was reportedly looking for somewhere for money to go. Official government guidance highlights that the role of a trade envoy carries a duty of confidentiality regarding sensitive information. Smith added that the poll shows the urgent need for a serious and honest debate about a post-monarchy Britain. Too many people are unsure of the alternative. Too many people see little of the royals except the royalist coverage and soft soap reporting. The monarchy is not going to reverse this trend of falling support. The late Queen was the one person keeping this creaking institution going. Even her legacy is now being tainted by the Andrew scandal. It's time the nation started looking to a future without the monarchy, and the opportunities for democratic reform and national renewal that change offers. Savanta interviewed 2,132 UK adults aged 18 and over online between February 6th to February 9th, 2026. And that article was written by Alistair Ferguson.
From the National Comments section, Tuesday, 10th of February, 2026. Rats will flee, but Labour's ship has already sunk. This article is by Steph Payton. Of all the conspiracy theories that could have turned out to be true, the world being run by a corporate paedophilic elite was not the one I had my money on. It's not that I think such heinous actions are beyond the rich. Nobody gets to £1 billion in the bank without a few human rights abuses along the way. But as a conspiracy theory, it all seemed a little too neat, too convenient, to place the blame of countless miseries on a handful of powerful nonces manoeuvring behind the scenes. And yet, here we are. The release of the Epstein files has laid bare the sheer scale of duplicity among the world's elite, to the point that it would be faster to list 1%ers that didn't make an appearance. But beyond the names of Jeffrey Epstein's foul clientele, the files also revealed the dead paedophile's hand in building the far right as we know it today. Brexit, he claims, was just the beginning. In an email exchange with Palantir founder Peter Thiel, Thiel responds, "Of what?" Epstein replies, "Return to tribalism, counter to globalization, amazing new alliances. You and I both agreed zero interest rates were too high, and as I said in your office, finding things on their way to collapse was much easier than finding the next bargain." For Epstein, societal collapse was an opportunity to profit, and in turn, he supported the causes that would hand him the world. The files show Epstein sniffing around the online forum 4chan and its founder at the time that it became a significant organising ground for white supremacists, Nazis and trolls. He built ties with powerful authoritarians like the US President Donald Trump, who still insists he never ever visited Epstein's Island, and of course, our villain of the week, Peter Mandelson, the so-called Prince of Darkness. Mandelson is a dirty open secret at the heart of the Labour Party. So much so that Tony Blair allegedly kept his involvement in New Labour hidden, choosing to give Mandelson the moniker of Bobby to better fool those around him. Under Mandelson and at the hands of countless enablers, the Labour Party has rooted out whatever remained of its left-wing identity, a principle that was continued by his spiritual successor, Morgan McSweeney. Together, McSweeney and Mandelson are alleged to have handpicked Labour's parliamentary candidates ahead of the 2024 general election. This off-the-books exercise was intended to bury any candidate that Mandelson considered too left-wing. For a century, under the restrictions of Westminster's undemocratic electoral system, the Labour Party has effectively been the sole voice of the left in our crumbling British Parliament. But now, what little power the left had in Parliament has been eroded by its supposed caretakers. The old way is collapsing and the fascists are at the door. Epstein got the broken Britain he dreamt of, and funnily enough, it just happened to be delivered by an old friend. The lack of judgment from Keir Starmer in appointing Mandelson is so obviously reckless that it feels orchestrated, but it doesn't end with him. The aforementioned Peter, I no longer believe that freedom and democracy are compatible, Teal, has his grubby fingers across NHS England already. Downing Street's former Director of Communications, Tim Allen, was brought into the role after serving as a trustee of the anti-trans organisation Sex Matters. He resigned yesterday, making him the fourth person to jump from the role since Starmer took office. Everywhere you look, the rats are fleeing. From top to bottom, it seems that the Prime Minister is surrounded by regressive right-wingers and anti-rights advocates. You could almost be left thinking that the contemporary Labour Party is itself an Epstein project of its own. Either that, or it has so utterly, spectacularly failed in its supposed remit that it has become an inversion of itself. I'm not sure how else a supposedly left-wing party could have so wholly bought into the nonsense belief that, to bring about a more left-wing world, first the party must capitulate to the right on everything from dehumanising migrants to speaking with enthusiasm on the possibility of turning Britain into a police state. What attempts there have been to challenge Labour's direction have proven futile. Andy Burnham could never have fixed the Labour Party. I don't think anyone could at this point. But in blocking the Greater Manchester Mayor from running in the Gorton and Denton by-election, it seems clear that even the soft left remain locked out of power. Which ultimately leads to the question, if Starmer does up and go, so what? The party seems so wholly captured by the McSweeneys and Mandelsons of it all that whoever replaces Starmer will just be a worse version of what we already had. And yes, I'm looking at you, West Streeting. You might as well fix the windscreen on a broken car. It's still not going anywhere. And that article was written by Steph Payton and read by Lynn McNeil. From the National Comments section, Tuesday, the 10th of February, 2026. Thoughts for Epstein victims from royals have come far too late. This article is by Shona Craven. It will be cold comfort to the family of Virginia Giuffre to read the latest statement from the British royal family about how the Prince and Princess of Wales are deeply concerned by the continuing revelations, about Jeffrey Epstein and his associates, and their thoughts remain focused on the victims. Giuffre, whose extraordinary strength and bravery led to the downfall of William's uncle, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, did not live to see the latest release of the Epstein files or the seismic impact of their release on British politics. She died by suicide last April. Royal concern has come much too late. The statement, although brief and not mentioning any names, is seen as significant given the fresh disclosures of grim correspondence between Epstein and the former Duke and Duchess of York. There can be no more glossing over the links between the sex offenders and the desperate, grasping, entitled, sycophantic royals. Of course, Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, and the countless depraved men in their circle had many, many other victims, and we will never know all of their names or even how many of them are still alive. As more evidence emerges about the tactics used, the sexual violence inflicted, and the suffering caused, most victims will not want to be in the thoughts of the rich and powerful, the very category of people whose privilege extends to being able to rape young women on demand. Instead, they will want to be left in peace to try to recover from the trauma they have suffered. For a long time, Giuffre herself was one of them, after she escaped from what she calls the invisible chains that kept her under Epstein's control. She built a new life, moved to another continent, and started a family. The first she knew of an investigation was when she received a phone call out of the blue from her abusers, who wanted assurances she would not talk to investigators. When an investigator did call, her first instinct was to assume it was actually someone paid by Epstein to pretend to be from the FBI. Her paranoia was not misplaced. While it was indeed the FBI who were getting in touch with her, she already knew the huge power and influence Epstein wielded. He had already demonstrated that he was above the law when multiple charges of unlawful sex acts with a minor were reduced to a single count of soliciting prostitution and a sentence of just 18 months in prison. He was not even in prison during most of that time, as from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. he was permitted to work from the office of a non-profit organisation that it appears he founded solely as a get-out-of-jail-free ruse. Many accounts of Giuffre's story refer vaguely to her troubled childhood, but her posthumous memoir, Nobody's Girl, elaborates on the circumstances that led to her being so vulnerable to abuse. While so much of her life was extraordinary, the account that she provides of her childhood, while devastating, is not so unusual. She alleges she was not only sexually abused by her father from the age of 7, but that her father also facilitated her further abuse by one of his friends. Her father denies the claims, but it is beyond dispute that the previously happy child, devoted to her younger brother and her beloved pet horse, became an unhappy teenager and a runaway. It was her father who helped get her a job as a spa attendant during a brief period of stability. This is where the story begins to take a stranger-than-fiction turn, as father and daughter were both working at Mar-a-Lago, the resort owned by Donald Trump. It was from here that Maxwell recruited Giuffre to work for Epstein. This is also where Giuffre's story, and those of so many girls and young women like her, can become hard to understand. She describes going to Epstein's house on the premise of being employed as a masseuse, but being molested during her very first encounter with him. Nevertheless, she returned. The situation was presented as normal. She remained under the spell of Epstein and Maxwell for 2 years. It's easy to say now, with all the information we have, that our thoughts are with the victims of Epstein, but it's very clear to see why those victims and others like them would keep quiet. Not just out of fear of retribution from their abusers, but also for fear of how they would be perceived. Why did they keep returning, knowing they would be abused? The question that is so often asked of abuse victims: if things were so bad, why did you stay? Giuffre has described the pair as masterminds at manipulation, and it's clear they were selective about their targets. Girls like Virginia, who had already been abused, were practiced at disassociating, disconnecting, enduring pain, indignity, and humiliation. This very coping mechanism would also make them unreliable witnesses to their own abuse, in the unlikely event they had the strength to testify. Against all those odds, Giuffre spoke out. She later acknowledged there were gaps in her memory and some inconsistencies in her accounts. She was an imperfect victim who could be discredited by those with expensive lawyers. She will have known that if, for example, a powerful man like Prince Andrew tried to dig up dirt on her, he might well find some. But she persevered, as she could not bear to think of Epstein being free to abuse others. She succeeded in saving others from harm. Tragically, in the end, she could not save herself. And that article was written by Shona Craven and read by Lynn McNeil.
The National Politics on Wednesday the 11th of February. Anna Sawar suspends Pam Duncan-Glancy over her paedophile ties. An article written by Alistair Ferguson. Anna Sawar has suspended the MSP Pam Duncan-Glancy following mounting pressure on the Scottish Labour leader after Sir Keir Starmer's former media chief had the whip removed due to his links with the same convicted paedophile. On Tuesday, Matthew Doyle, who sits in the House of Lords, had the Labour whip withdrawn over his past support for Sean Morton, a former Labour councillor in Murray who was charged with possessing and distributing indecent images of children in December 2016. Mr Morton was suspended by Labour after he appeared in court and was later convicted, including for possessing indecent pictures of children. Scottish Labour confirmed on Tuesday that the whip had been removed from Ms Duncan-Glancy, who also had links to Mr Morton, whilst a probe was underway. A Scottish Labour spokesperson told The National, "All complaints are assessed thoroughly in line with our rules and procedures." Ms Duncan-Glancy previously announced that she would step down at the next election after her friendship with Mr Morton came to light, and was removed as the party's education spokesperson. It emerged in January that Ms Duncan-Glancy had maintained her relationship with Mr Morton even after he went to prison. Mr Morton was spared jail for his 2017 conviction of possessing images of girls under 15 and a couple having sex with a dog. He was handed a community payback order, which included 140 hours of unpaid work. The Daily Record newspaper revealed in January that he had committed further offences which led to a prison sentence. Last year, he was sentenced at Glasgow Sheriff Court to 16 months in prison after pleading guilty to possessing indecent images of children, and got another 16 months for breaching his sexual offences order. It said that he was jailed in January, but the offences were backdated to May of 2024. He was released from prison in the autumn of 2025. After his release, he celebrated Ms Duncan-Glancy's birthday towards the end of the year with dinner and drinks. It comes after Mr Doyle was suspended from Labour on Tuesday. The Labour peer had campaigned for Mr Morton when he ran as an independent in May of 2017, despite the charges at the time. Mr Doyle has said that Mr Morton was maintaining his innocence at the time he backed his campaign, and that he regrets supporting him. In a statement, he said, "Those of us who took him at his word were clearly mistaken. I've never sought to dismiss or diminish the seriousness of the offences for which he was rightly convicted. They are clearly abhorrent, and I've never questioned his conviction. Following his conviction, any contact was extremely limited, and I've not seen or spoken to him in years. Twice I was at events organised by other people which he attended, and once I saw him to check on his welfare after concerns were raised through others. I acted to try to ensure the welfare of a troubled individual, whilst fully condemning the crimes for which he'd been convicted, and being clear that my thoughts are with the victims of his crimes. I'm sorry about the mistakes that I've made. I will not be taking the Labour whip. For the avoidance of any doubt, let me conclude where I started. Mr. Morton's crimes were vile, and my only concerns are for his victims. An article written by Alistair Ferguson. The National News on Wednesday the 11th of February. Andrew's arrival at Sandringham leads to fury from the locals. An article written by James Walker. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's arrival at Sandringham has led to anger from locals. We previously reported on how the disgraced former prince quit the Royal Lodge last week and is currently living at Wood Farm Cottage in the Sandringham estate, whilst his permanent home undergoes renovations. It comes as police confirmed that they were assessing fresh claims about Mr. Mountbatten Windsor. A victim of Jeffrey Epstein, the late paedophile financier with whom Mr. Mountbatten Windsor was friends, has alleged that she was sent to the then prince's residence in 2010. Thames Valley Police said that it was aware of reports about a woman said to have been taken to an address in Windsor in 2010 for sexual purposes. We also reported on how his arrival provoked a strike among staff, according to reports. But it appears as though his new neighbours aren't happy about his arrival either. Local resident Chris Thompson told the Mirror newspaper that Andrew's move wasn't a very good idea, adding, "I would have thought that King Charles is supporting him with his bills, but it's a bit bleak out there. I don't think there'll be a lot there for him to do, really." The owner of a local hair salon also told the newspaper, "I think someone like Andrew should be locked up and justice should be served." Another local said, "I'm not sure. I don't really particularly like the things that he's done, so I'm not very happy about it, to be honest. But you can't stop it, can you? You just have to get on with it, and hopefully he moves somewhere else." Local resident Angela added, "We love Sandringham and we don't care who's there, but I think my best thought is that he should exile himself and put us all out of our misery." An article written by James Walker. The National News on Wednesday the 11th of February. A new look is unveiled after trains undergo a £75 million refurbishment. An article written by Beth Templeton. A long-distance train operator has unveiled the first refurbished train of its new Voyager fleet as part of a £75 million investment to deliver a more comfortable experience for passengers. Cross Country unveiled the first refurbished train of the Voyager fleet, which marks the start of the investment. The long-distance operator has a network beginning in Aberdeen and stretching the length of the UK. Cross Country's managing director, Shona Rolfe, said, "This train marks an important step in our commitment to improving the experience for everyone who travels with us. The Voyager fleet has served passengers well for more than 2 decades, and these upgrades will ensure that it continues to meet modern expectations for comfort, sustainability and security. We're proud to be investing in the future of long-distance rail travel and look forward to welcoming passengers on board our refurbished trains," she added. In 2025, Cross Country delivered a total of 39.6 million journeys, calling at more than 100 stations across Scotland, England and Wales. The refurbishment programme has refreshed the train's interior and exterior, with Cross Country describing the change as a modern and consistent look throughout the fleet. Over the next 2 years, all 70 trains in Cross Country's long-distance fleet will see a number of changes, including new seating with increased legroom, upgraded tables, new carpets throughout, and more. The refurbishment programme is producing near-zero waste material due to manufacturer Alstom's policy of sending no waste to landfill. Steve Harvey, Alstom's Services Director for the UK and Ireland, said, "This milestone reflects the strength of Alstom's refurbishment capabilities in the UK and the expertise of our team in Derby. Upgrading a fleet as intensively used as the Voyagers demands precision, innovation and deep technical knowledge, and our people have delivered exactly that." The refurbishment has been carried out by around 130 staff at the Litchurch Lane facility in Derby. An article written by Beth Templeton. The National News on Wednesday the 11th of February. A free public transport trial in Glasgow launches. An article written by Drew Sandilands. Unlimited free travel is now being provided to 1,000 people in Glasgow as a pilot project gets underway. The city's free public transport scheme launched on Monday, giving 7 weeks of free journeys on buses, trains and the subway to participants. Those taking part in the pilot include people who regularly rely on private cars and residents who face barriers to travel, such as patients who struggle to afford the cost of getting to hospital appointments. Councillors approved the use of £225,000 for the scheme late last year, which aims to assess the impact of fare-free public transport on travel behaviour. People taking part in the project received a zone card, allowing travel across the city and the surrounding area at no cost. The pilot will monitor whether free transport encourages a shift away from private car use and assess how reducing costs impacts access to employment, education and healthcare. It's been hailed as a game changer by the city's Green Group, which pushed for the project to go ahead. Councillor Christy Mearns, transport spokesperson for the Greens, said, "This pilot will demonstrate the transformative effect of making transport more accessible. With so many people unable to use public transport in ways that suit them due to cost, and given many don't have access to a car, it's imperative that we challenge this head-on. Transport is a large cause of our country's emissions, so not only would free public transport help people's pockets, but it will hopefully help the planet too." Half of the participants were recruited from a broadly representative cross-section of city residents, with a focus on individuals who regularly rely on private cars. The other 500 were recruited through community and support services, who are more likely to face barriers to travel. Many were identified through Glasgow's Child Poverty programme. Services like Improving the Cancer Journey and Glasgow Helps, which support residents who may experience difficulty accessing essential services, were also involved, while NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde nominated patients and families for whom travel costs can contribute to missed appointments. Participants will complete surveys and travel diaries at key points during the pilot period. A series of participant case studies will also be developed. It's expected that the pilot will help to build an evidence base about how free travel affects how people move around the city and take part in the economy. ScotRail services, the subway, bus services operated by First Bus, Stagecoach, McGill's and West Coast Motors are all covered by the zone cards, which provide access to zones 1 and 2. An article written by Drew Sandilands. The National News on Wednesday the 11th of February. Jim Wallace is described as a man of sincerity at his Ireland funeral. An article written by Laura Pollock. The late Jim Wallace has been remembered as a man of integrity, sincerity and humility at his funeral on Orkney. The funeral service for the former Deputy First Minister and Scottish Liberal Democrat leader was held at St Magnus Cathedral in Kirkwall on his adopted island home. Political figures including Lib Dem leader Sir Ed Davey and the First Minister John Swinney attended the service on Tuesday. Others from Lord Wallace's party, such as the Scottish leader Alex Cole-Hamilton and the MP Alistair Carmichael, were also in attendance. Orkney's MSP, Liam MacArthur, paid an emotional tribute to his friend and mentor, recording how Lord Wallace helped him start his career in politics more than 35 years ago. Lord Wallace died at the end of January after suffering complications from surgery. Flags were lowered to half-mast at the Scottish Parliament, and tributes were paid from across the political spectrum. The former Scottish Lib Dem leader was Scotland's first Deputy First Minister following devolution. He also acted as First Minister on 3 occasions. He had represented Orkney as both an MP and an MSP. Lord Wallace was also a former moderator of the Church of Scotland's General Assembly. The funeral service on Tuesday was conducted by the Reverend Dr. Marjorie McLean. Addressing the family, friends and colleagues who'd gathered at the Island Cathedral for the service, Dr. McLean said, "Jim's appointment as moderator was the most visible year of a life of church involvement as a member, elder, commissioner to the General Assembly long before he chaired it, member of various church choirs, including at the time of his death, and simultaneous membership of choirs in 2 cathedrals, here and in Dunblane. And to the pinnacle task, the moderatorship, he brought his wealth of knowledge of public life, all the contacts and instincts and understandings garnered over years at the heart of the dynamic of modern Scotland, but also a wealth of knowledge of Scotland's spiritual life from the perspective of a thoughtful, prayerful, humble Christian servant." His brother, Neil Wallace, addressed mourners saying, "He was an example because of his work ethic, his moral compass, and the way that he embraced challenges head-on." He said that despite his brother's towering intellect, he never quite believed that he was good enough. Jim walked with kings and never lost his love for or his empathy with people. Orkney's MP, Alistair Carmichael, said that everyone on the island knew someone who'd been helped by Jim Wallace. Mr. MacArthur gave a eulogy to his friend and mentor, describing the late Lord Wallace as a man of integrity, sincerity and humility. His plain-speaking nature meant that what you saw was what you got. There were no sides to Jim, the Lib Dem MSP explained. He described how Lord Wallace gave him his first job in politics as a researcher, conducting the job interview in an Edinburgh Waverley railway station pub packed with Scotland football fans. With his voice breaking, he said, "He really was the best of men," as those Tartan Army fans in the Waverley Station bar sang that afternoon back in 1990. "When will we see your like again?" When, indeed. An article written by Laura Pollock. The National News on Wednesday the 11th of February. A weather warning for the whole of the country is issued. An article written by Laura Pollock. Warnings of rain and snow which may lead to flooding are in place in some parts of the country. The Met Office has issued yellow warnings of rain in parts of western Scotland and in the east from Aberdeenshire down to Fife, which is in force until midnight on Wednesday. A further warning has been issued for snow and ice across the whole of Scotland from 4 p.m. on Thursday until midday on Friday. Forecasters warn that rain, likely to be heavy at times, will persist across eastern Scotland during the day and predict that this may lead to some disruption and possible flooding as it comes after recent rainfall. They predict that a further 15 to 25 millimetres may fall quite widely, with potential for another 30 to 40 millimetres building up over high ground. Snow is likely to fall above 300 to 400 metres, especially across Aberdeenshire, Angus and Perthshire, where 5 to 10 centimetres of snow may accumulate by the end of Wednesday. The warning in the east covers Angus, Dundee, Fife, Perth and Kinross, Stirling, Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire, while in the west it covers Argyll and Bute, Inverclyde, North Ayrshire, Renfrewshire and Western Bartonshire. The Scottish Environment Protection Agency has also issued 3 flood warnings and 7 flood alerts. An article written by Laura Pollock. The National News on Wednesday the 11th of February. Stunning Roman altars are to go on public display. An article written by Gregor Young. 2 stunning stone altars discovered at a Roman fort near Edinburgh and acquired for the nation are to go on show for the first time in a new exhibition. The altars were once the centrepiece of the most northerly temple to the god Mithras, known in the Roman Empire, and are said to really bring the beliefs of the Roman frontier to life. Experts described the cult of Mithras as a secretive, male-only religion which celebrated the triumph of good over evil and light over darkness. The altars were excavated at Inveresk in East Lothian and date to around the year 140 AD, when southern Scotland was reoccupied under Antoninus Pius. Curators said that the altars help reveal new details about the beliefs and lives of the soldiers on the frontier. They were acquired in 2016 by National Museum Scotland, which is sharing news of the acquisition for the first time. The altars have undergone extensive conservation work and will go on show for the first time in November in Roman Scotland, The Life on the Edge of the Empire. Dr. Fraser Hunter, the Principal Curator of Prehistory and Roman Archaeology at National Museum Scotland, said, "These stunning altars really bring the beliefs of the Roman frontier to life. The quality of the carving, traces of paint and dramatic lighting effects show that they were impressive and expensive monuments. I'm sure that visitors will be amazed by them when they can see them up close in our new exhibition." One of the altars depicts the face of the sun god Sol and also features carvings of the four seasons depicted as female deities. Curators said that it would have been illuminated from behind, so that in the low light of the temple, worshippers would have seen Sol's eyes, mouth, and the rays of his crown glowing. The other altar honours Mithras himself and is decorated with carvings linked to the god Apollo, another god of light. Both altars were dedicated by a legionary centurion thought to be Gaius Cassius Flavianus, whose name was abbreviated on the altar as G. Cass Fla. It's thought that he was probably in command of the fort garrison at the time. During their time buried underground, the altars, which were excavated in 2010, had broken into fragments. They've undergone conservation work to reconstruct them and to prepare them for display. While carrying out this work, conservators identified traces of paint on the carvings, revealing that originally they would have been painted in vibrant colours. The exhibition, Roman Scotland, The Life on the Edge of the Empire, at the National Museum of Scotland in Edinburgh, will address the common misconception that the Romans never got beyond Hadrian's Wall. Experts said that the empire extended its reach much further north 3 times, up to Scotland's central belt and deep into northeast Scotland. Fortifications built by the Romans included the Antonine Wall, which was constructed across the narrowest part of Scotland from the Clyde to the Forth, with additional forts along the coasts to the west and east, including Inveresk. Finds from Inveresk will be displayed together for the first time in the exhibition. Curators said that this will shed new light on the Roman occupation in Scotland and demonstrate how this significant frontier outpost was supplied from across the empire and the impacts this occupation had on the local population. The exhibition, Roman Scotland, The Life on the Edge of the Empire, will run from November 2026 until April of 2027. An article written by Gregor Young. The National Politics on Wednesday the 11th of February. We look at what Sawa's call for Starmer to go mean for the Holyrood election. An exclusive article written by Steph Braun. A top pollster has said that he's not convinced that Anna Sawa can shrug off the branch office tag that has haunted Scottish Labour for years, despite his attempts to draw a line between himself and Sir Keir Starmer. Standing in front of a large saltire on Monday afternoon, Mr Sawa attempted to put space between him and UK Labour by calling for Mr Starmer to resign in a bombshell speech, which appears to have largely backfired on him. While some MSPs have publicly backed Mr Sawa along with a couple of Scottish Labour MPs, the whole cabinet came out in support of Mr Starmer after Mr Sawa's press conference, with huge questions now being asked about the Scottish Labour leader's strategy and tactics months out from the Holyrood election. Pollster Mark Diffley, who runs the Diffley Partnership, told The National that while the motivation for Mr Sawa's move was clear, given Scottish Labour are performing so poorly in the polls, he believes that convincing voters that they're not a branch office will be difficult, given that the notion is deeply ingrained in people's minds. Mr Diffley said there's fairly significant evidence to suggest that the reason Labour hasn't made any progress or has lost so many votes since 2024 is because of the performance of the UK government. You can see why they felt they had to do something. What are the potential benefits from it? One is that he sort of shrugs off this branch office tag that they've had for quite some time. I'm not convinced that that is going to work. What he wants to do is to pitch Scottish Labour as a separate entity from UK Labour. But of course, when you look at the polling, when you ask people which party stands up for Scotland, which party do you trust to stand up for Scotland's interest, the SNP is miles in front on that issue. So he's tried to get into their kind of territory, but for this to work, you're going to have to change that mindset, which is quite deeply ingrained in voters' heads, and it doesn't feel like there's enough time to do that. Mr. Sarwar caveated his speech heavily on Monday, saying that he had been close with Mr. Starmer, adding that it caused him personal hurt and pain to call for his resignation. Mr. Diffley said that their close relationship makes the idea that Scottish Labour is a separate entity from UK Labour a hard sell for Mr. Sarwar. He added, "The pitch is, I'm my own man, I don't answer to anyone else. See that really unpopular guy down in London? He's nothing to do with me." The voters see Mr. Starmer as hugely unpopular, the most unpopular Prime Minister in polling history, and Mr. Sarwar basically wants to say, I agree. I think that's a hard sell when they've been so close. He's probably made the Prime Minister's position stronger, if anything, having set out to unseat him. Mr. Diffley suggested that Scottish Labour was trying to distance itself from the UK government far too late in the day, just 3 months out from the Holyrood election. He said that alarm bells should have been ringing long ago, that the two bodies were on an inevitable collision course, because of Scottish Labour having to fight an election years before UK Labour. In a sense, we were heading for something like this for quite some time, said Mr. Diffley. Scottish Labour and UK Labour are working on completely different timescales. For the UK party, they've made it quite clear that their plan was to do really unpopular stuff at the beginning and to get that out of the way. That was in the autumn of 2024, and you think if you're Labour in Scotland, the alarm bells should really have started ringing, because if they're spending the first 2 years doing the really hard stuff, that 2 years is your timetable for getting elected. So this disjoin between the two electoral cycles was always going to lead to this point of conflict, though I don't think anyone could have predicted that it would make a clash quite like this. It comes after former Labour adviser Paul Sinclair described Mr. Sarwar as a pretend politician who has underlined his own irrelevance. He added that it was entirely unfair to pin Scottish Labour's downfall all on the UK government, saying that Mr. Sarwar had offered nothing in terms of any agenda of his own. An exclusive article written by Steph Braun.
The National, Thursday the 12th of February, from the news section, by Steph Braun. Former SNP MP hits out at John Swinney's independence vote claims. Former SNP MP Angus MacNeil has accused John Swinney of leading people up the garden path, with claims that a majority for his party will lead to a second vote on independence. MacNeil, who was an SNP MP for 19 years, but joined ALBA at the end of 2024, hit out at the party's current leadership, as it was announced he will stand for the rival pro-independence ALBA party at May's Holyrood election. The former MP will be ALBA's lead candidate on the regional list for the Highlands and Islands area. He said a vote for ALBA would mean independent supporters do not waste their list votes. He said May's election will be about independence for ALBA, which was set up by former SNP leader Alex Salmond after he quit the SNP, and led by him until his death in 2024. MacNeil said, "While I still, of course, have many friends in the SNP, I find it deeply unfortunate that the SNP leadership is currently leading people up the garden path on independence by insisting people believe the UK Prime Minister will grant a referendum on independence when they have clearly said they will not." However, he claimed votes for ALBA, which currently has no MSPs after Ash Regan quit the party last year, could potentially halve what Reform and others receive. He added this means that when Westminster refuses a referendum, we can call a special election at Holyrood on the matter of independence, So voting ALBA causes consequences for Westminster when they refuse a referendum. I hope that the Highlands and Islands will have more than one ALBA MSP working in Holyrood, with other pro-independence parties such as the SNP helping to provide a route to a democratic vote on Scotland's independence. The National, Thursday the 12th of February. From the news section, SNP strike budget deal with Lib Dems despite free pass from Labour. The SNP government has struck a deal with the Lib Dems to pass its budget. The spending plan legislation was set to pass a Holyrood vote regardless after Anas Sarwar withdrew his Scottish Labour contingent from the process, saying his MSPs would abstain on whatever the SNP decided to do. However, on Thursday, the Scottish Lib Dems and the government both confirmed that they had reached a deal to support the budget bill when it comes to the final Holyrood vote on February 26. The bill passed first stage on Thursday with 65 votes in support, 30 against, 24 abstentions and 10 no vote recorded. Jamie Green, the Tory-turned-Lib Dem MSP, said the deal included $300 million in funding for his new party's priorities. This includes $178 million for business through rates relief, $20 million for social care to fund worker pay rises, $70 million for colleges, which was described as equivalent to a 10% uplift on last year, and $7.1 million for island-specific investment, including the removal of peak ferry fares. Finance Secretary Shona Robeson also welcomed the 26-27 budget deal, saying it was focused on priorities of people of Scotland, ramping up cost of living support, driving further improvement in the NHS, and supporting our landmark efforts to eradicate child poverty. She went on, "We have been clear that we would seek to work constructively to deliver on these priorities, and the Lib Dems have engaged in our discussions in a positive manner throughout the budget process. There are a range of areas where we share priorities and we have acted upon, such as the college sector for hospices and social care. With that agreement now in place to secure a majority in Parliament in support of the bill, I am confident we will make lives better for people in Scotland." Green said the £300 million that we have secured in a whole host of areas show just how serious we are about getting stuff done. It means there is more money to protect businesses from crushing rate rises, more money to help small businesses and to support the next generation of entrepreneurs. There is more money for hospices, for colleges, for people waiting on a neurodevelopment assessment. There is more money to remove peak fares on Northern Isles ferries for island residents. Neither the Scottish Conservatives nor Scottish Labour got a penny from this budget. That is because neither cared about using their leverage as opposition parties to deliver for people. Last year, the SNP government won backing from both the Greens and the Lib Dems for their budget. However, this time the Greens said the SNP would have to go further to earn their backing. The spending plans laid out by Robeson in January already included some green policies such as private jet tax and higher council tax rates for Scotland's most valuable properties. However, the party's co-leader Ross Greer said on Thursday, "With people across the country struggling to cover their bills and our climate in crisis, though we know the Scottish Government could do more." He added, "Labour MSPs asked for nothing and got nothing on this budget. Green MSPs have already secured changes which will feed more children, save families money and protect Scotland's natural environment. We aren't done yet though. We know it could be better. If the Scottish Government agrees, we are willing to work with them to reach an agreement before the final vote in a few weeks' time."
That concludes this week's edition of the National Podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels, Tune Review, and to tell your friends about our service.